You're probably thinking the man in the white shirt is a prisoner trying to escape, and the two men behind him are security guards chasing him down. But what if I told you those guards aren't actually stopping an escape? They're committing one. There are two accused murderers, dressed as officers, staging one of the wildest courtroom escapes ever caught on tape. And this is just one of the 19 wildest courtroom escapes we'll be covering in this video. This is Madison Shy, who's faced with assault charges in Bay City, Michigan. Shy, sitting next to her attorney, was in shock. The judge just sentenced her to 1 year in jail for the assault charge. Her reaction? Run! Music. Shy's girlfriend in the audience stood up to block the officer's pursuit, buying Shy valuable seconds. Music. The court officers were light years behind her, but she wasn't free yet. The door guard grabbed her by the sweatshirt, slamming her into a brick pillar. With the help of the second officer, Shy was forced to the ground and into handcuffs. Music. Her music escape attempt earned her an extra 98 days in jail for contempt, on top of her original 12-month charge. Shy's escape attempt was stopped by one brave deputy. But what happens when a defendant's escape attempt goes so smoothly that no one even notices? Like in the case of Dwayne Chaney, who's charged with murder in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Chaney was arrested in 2015 for premeditated murder. This was a cold-blooded and premeditated, ambush-style murder. Chaney was moments away from learning his verdict when he stepped out for a bathroom break. The hallway was full of witnesses, but no one expected him to do this. Instead of turning back toward his courtroom, Chaney instead turned the opposite way. This is Chaney's father waiting for him in the hallway. In seconds, the pair do the unthinkable. They walked calmly out the courthouse doors. Once outside, Chaney ditched his top layer of clothes and heads toward the street. His mother and girlfriend pull up in the getaway car, and just like that, Chaney is gone. His freedom is short-lived. However, 3 days later, police got a tip-off from a neighbor and found Chaney hiding inside a garbage bin. Chaney's father, mother, and girlfriend were also charged with harboring a fugitive. If you thought that was the end of the story, think again. Back in court, Chaney was viciously attacked by his murder victim's sister during her victim impact statement. Cameras weren't there to capture the scene, but they did capture the aftermath. This is very emotional and traumatic for everyone who just witnessed that. We're not going to finish the sentencing today. As if that wasn't shocking enough, the victim's mother then apologized to her son's killer. The rest of the family does not support the outburst of any violence or anger. I was telling them I was very, very sorry that had happened to him. In the end, Chaney was sentenced to life in prison for murder. Chaney's escape was so nonchalant that no one suspected a thing. This next defendant takes a page out of Chaney's book, but with one crucial mistake. Music. This is David Knight, who's facing drug charges in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. When Knight was summoned to what he thought was a routine court hearing, he appeared voluntarily. Seconds later, the judge broke the news. He had an outstanding warrant for drug possession. He ordered police to arrest him, but Knight had a different idea. He slipped into an elevator, just as it closed. Once out, Knight paused. But that was a crucial mistake. His hesitation caught the eye of a police officer, and when Knight started to run, the officer gave chase. Music. Knight ran down the street as fast as he could, but it wasn't enough. The officer caught up to him just off camera, but he didn't walk away unscathed. He separated, possibly broke his shoulder. He also chipped a tooth and had multiple abrasions. Despite his escape attempt, the judge forewent a prison sentence and sentenced Knight to 1 year of probation for the drug charges. That deputy's heroic pursuit kept one more criminal off the streets. But in this next case, it's not the defendant that slips up, it's the deputies. This is the case of Nicholas Tillard, who's charged with endangering children in Hillsborough, Ohio. Hoping for mercy, Tillard pleaded guilty to his charges. But when he heard the judge's sentence, Tillard panicked, casually stood up, and then ran. Police gave chase, but they don't stand a chance. The first deputy fell flat on his way out the door, holding up all other deputies while Tillard made his escape. However, 2 hours later, police found Tillard hiding in a nearby suburb. Finally, Tillard would face his sentence: 12 months in jail for child endangerment. Tillard's escape attempt had deputies falling like dominoes. But what happens when the judge has to step in, like in the case of Sidney Nwami, who's facing domestic violence charges in Pike, Mississippi? During trial, Newsom is asked to sign some paperwork. His mother and brother are watching from the audience. The deputy hands the signed paperwork to the judge. But Newsom has his own plan. When the bailiff blocks his approach, things get tense. The bailiff doesn't wait for things to escalate. She takes his elbow and leads him toward the door. But once Newsom realizes her plan, all hell breaks loose. She manages to grab him by her collar, but she can't contain him for long. Meanwhile, Newsom's mother and brother bowled out of their seats in a panic. Then the judge got involved. He slammed Nwami onto the table like a sack of potatoes. Then, Nwami's brother joined the fray. Shockingly, he helped hold his brother down. When backup arrived, they arrested the brother, but later let him go after realizing the truth. Newsom, however, was dragged out in cuffs. The judge sentenced him to spend 48 hours in jail for contempt. This judge single-handedly ended outburst. But in this next case, an entire family is out for blood. In the case of Paul Wade, who's charged with felony possession of a handgun and 2 counts of murder in Louisville, Kentucky, Wade was arrested after stalking and killing 2 roommates in September of 2022. In court, Wade was forced to face the families of his victims, and he wouldn't walk away unscathed. Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you. The day before your insert. As court proceedings ended, Wade walked toward the door. Suddenly, the courtroom exploded. Both families ganged up on Wade while the judge sat calmly in her seat. Wade ran out of the judge's door to escape, but the attackers were hot on his trail. Even the judge has lost her composure. As backup rushed to follow Wade, the remaining family members explained what happened. According to the family, Wade whispered an insult at them on his way out the door. Hence, the attack. 4 family members were charged with contempt after the fight. As for Wade, he faces life in prison for matters. Wade was caught by the victim's family within seconds. But what happens when an escapee actually does make it out? Like in the case of Eddie Villalobos, whose charges include reckless driving, unlawful use of a weapon, reckless endangerment, and murder in Hillsboro, Oregon. Villalobos was in court after viciously stabbing an acquaintance at his apartment complex. Villalobos was cuffed at the ankles and the waist, but to keep the jury unbiased, the deputy was ordered to undo Villalobos's shackles. While court was in session, Villalobos was well behaved, so it came as a shock when he did this. Villalobos stood up to stretch his legs. Then he bolted. Police were only seconds behind him, but Villalobos was fast. The Alu flew down the stairs, almost free. Villalobos ran so far the police couldn't chase him, but his freedom didn't last long. Later that night, police got a call from a worried neighbor and found Villalobos hiding in the closet of a vacant house. That accused murderer Eddie Villalobos was found here. This apartment complex, right here. Behind me, Suzanne Siller lives in the apartment complex where a tip led law enforcement to Eddie Villalobos' location. And I go, what's going on? My doors are over there broken. And that's how. But now to find out, that's even more scarier. To find out, I live right here. To find out that he was in there? That's scary. Villalobos says speed earned him a few hours of freedom. But speed is nothing when a stun gun is involved. Like in the case of Derek Wright, who's charged with speeding, wanton endangerment, and domestic violence in Louisville, Kentucky. The best we ever bacon first. You fried up and then kind of crumble and then you push me in. Whoa, where you going? Where you going? So I can't go to the shop. Just looking at me like my mom. Wright was in court for a speeding ticket, or so he thought. In reality, while processing the ticket, the judge discovered an outstanding warrant for his arrest for some previous domestic battery charges. We're verifying it. I went to our court for I need you to calm down. We always verify. Yeah, if you're good. If not, I'm going to take care of you guys. I need to call my mom if I want to get arrested because this is something new to me, because this is the only thing that I was supposed to go to court for. It's so, It's still good. Okay. When he learned the truth, Wright panicked. Sir, you need to calm down. Okay. They're going to go ahead. They're going to execute this. They'll let you take some time to call your mom. Wright was led away in handcuffs, but he had no intention of going to jail. Wright made a break for it, but the deputy held tight onto his waistband. The two took a tumble into the benches. Hold your arms out before you cancel any better. Wright's chance of escape was dwindling by the second, but he kept fighting the officers, forcing them to make a tough decision. Quit fighting. All right. Stop. After the stun gun, Wright was much more compliant. Done. Are we done? All right. You? Going to get you up? You're going to walk back there real nice. Okay. We're going to play good today. Okay. We're going to play good. All right, if you don't, I'm going to light your ass up. He was charged with third-degree assault, resisting arrest, criminal mischief, and disorderly conduct on top of his other charges. Wright's escape attempt ended before it ever began. But for this next defendant, not even bolted, bulletproof. Doors could stop his escape. This is Kyle Campion, who's charged with aggravated robbery in Darwin, Australia. Campion had only one security guard watching him when his armed robbery hearing was adjourned, and he took full advantage of the opportunity. He shoved the guard, grabbed a metal water bottle, and made a run for it. But Campion soon encountered a problem. The doors were locked. Looking fast, Campion shattered an emergency fire exit door with his water bottle. Campion barefoot stepped over the broken glass to escape. Music, however, his freedom was short-lived. Campion was found by police less than an hour later. The judge sentenced Campion to 19 months for the escape, plus a further 2.5 years for aggravated robbery. Campion successfully escaped the courthouse all on his own. But what happens when an escaping convict has their entire family there for support? Like in the case of Michael Thomas, who's facing 2 charges of first-degree reckless homicide in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 17-year-old Thomas was arrested after he killed a pregnant woman during an attempted robbery. This was the moment he learned his fate. Applause. Thomas's family exploded with rage at their son's treatment. Thomas' outbursts didn't last long. Deputies overpowered him before he even left the room. Are you okay? Are you okay? Look out! With Thomas under control, the police had a new safety hazard. Family. No good is going to be done by this poor game disruption. Okay. It is only going to make the situation worse. Luckily, the family calmed down. Although tensions were high, the situation was resolved without any injuries. But the same can't be said for the case of Dorius Wright and Calvin House. This is Dorius Wright and Calvin House, and they're both facing armed robbery and murder charges in Nashville. Wright House and 2 other accomplices were arrested for murder after a robbery. Gone wrong ended in the death of a university student. During the attempted robbery, Yorich was actually shot, and then the kids took off. He didn't make his way inside of his home, but he was found around 3 that afternoon by a housemate. He was rushed to Vanderbilt Medical Center, where he died. Because all 4 suspects were under the age of 18, they were sent to a juvenile justice center to wait for their trial. But things would go very, very wrong. For dangerous teens still on the run tonight. 2 of them accused of murder before their escape from Metro's Juvenile Justice Center on Saturday. At 9:30 p.m. the group was cleaning the hallway when their supervisor was called away to a disturbance. That's when the group jumped into action. The 13 hesitated, doubling his decision. But seconds later, he followed his friends out. All staff had reported to the fight on the other side of the building, leaving the hallways clear for these escapees. Music. By the time their supervisor got back to his post, the teens were long gone, and he panicked. On Sane Woodland Street. Repeat the address at the Juvenile Detention Center. We had some youth escape from the Juvenile Detention Center. Do I contact 911, or do I contact the Kuzaye, call the other number, and just had me on hold? So, like I'm driving around, trying to find them actually right now, as we speak. Hours later, an emergency task force found Wright and House in the parking lot of a nearby apartment complex. We're very happy to have these 2 youth. these extremely dangerous youth off our streets tonight. The other two boys were still at large, but not for long. 17-year-old Brandon Cars and Maurice Marsh are still on the loose. We're not going to stop. We've continued 24/7 and will continue to look. Days later, they were spotted and arrested at a convenience store near the Kentucky border. 2 detention center employees were fired for negligence that aided in the escape. The incident report says it recommends the termination of 3 employees. Metro Police saying at this time they don't believe any overt criminal act helped them escape, but rather a lot of gross negligence. Looking at their own internal report, I just saw a pattern of people not paying attention to what they should be doing. These clever teens took advantage of an unexpected opportunity. But in this next case, the defendant relies on pure brute force to earn his freedom. Music Corey Ran was charged with unlawful possession of a firearm and resisting arrest in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Corey had been in and out of jail all his life. But when the judge sentenced him to jail, yet again, Corey refused to go back. Where are you going? Where are you going? Get a deputy, have this guy arrested right now. Despite the judge's threat, Ran walks straight out the door. Court staff quickly follow him out. Roan already has a head start. Music he makes it down to flights of stairs, with no obstacle until this. Music the security guard caught Ran's collar and got dragged down the hallway by the fleeing suspect. The two slammed into a metal detector, breaking his grip. Seconds later, Ran had disappeared. The injured guard was taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, the sheriff sent out a public advisory about the escape. He is a violent individual. If they see him, if anybody knows where he's at, we're asking them to call 911. The police force waited for any sign of Ran. But what happened next shocked them to their core. Ran turned himself in. He walked into the sheriff's office himself. Ran was charged with escape and assault. And although his final act of repentance might find him favor with the judge, his ultimate sentence has yet to be released. Ran's escape sent a deputy to the emergency room. But in this next case, it takes a whole team of deputies to stop the violence. This is Andrew Worth, who's charged with 2 counts of homicide in Iona, Wisconsin. Worth was arrested after shooting and killing an off-duty police officer and her boyfriend after an altercation at a bar back in 2009. Worth said something to Luke, and her boyfriend, Peters, came to her defense. Worth says Peters told him to go outside, and that's when the shooting took place. When Worth heard his charges, he couldn't control himself. Each of these are separate class felonies, and they're separately punishable by life in prison. No, Your Honor. Nothing. Thank you. When the judge set his bond to $1 million, Worth exploded. A swarm of officers descended on him before he could even start to run. They carried him like a baby right out the courtroom door. In the end, the judge sentenced Worth to 10 years for his crimes. Worth's outburst was as fruitless as a toddler's temper tantrum. But what happens when a defendant, desperate for freedom, attacks his own mother? Like in the case of Christopher Jackson, who's charged with 2 counts of assault of a police officer and trespassing in Corvallis, Oregon. The courtroom footage has no audio, but Jackson's flippant attitude shines through as clear as day. This is Jackson's mother. Jackson shoved his mother backwards, caught off guard. She tried to talk some sense into him, but Jackson is out of control. Amusa Jackson rushes the podium and swings the chair at the judge. His attorney and mother run to the rescue, but no one can stop Jackson's rage. It takes 2 guards plus Jackson's attorney to pin him to the floor. Eventually, Jackson's energy drains away. But now, officers have the opposite problem. Jackson acts like a dead weight, making the officer's job even harder. Eventually, Jackson is handcuffed and sentenced to 6 years in jail for his outburst. Jackson's own mother couldn't control his outburst. But what happens when the task falls to a bunch of unsuspecting jurors? Like in the case of Nicholas Carter, who's charged with aggravated assault of a minor in Skogan, Maine. Carter had just been found guilty of assaulting but instead of accepting his fate, Carter chose a different course of action. Music, this is Carter, still handcuffed in the middle of an escape attempt, and this is one of the jurors for Carter's trial. Seconds ago, these 3 jurors were patiently waiting for the remaining jurors to arrive so they could begin the jury portion of that day's trial. But when Carter emerged from the courtroom, their plans changed. The juror grabs Carter by his jacket, but it's not enough. Music, the juror is in no rush, and he has a good reason. The deputy is seconds behind Carter and gaining fast. Music, but not only that, 2 jurors just arrived to court, seeing the escaped convict. They too joined the chase. Music, Carter trips right at the crucial moment, and he's done for. Carter was dragged back to court and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Carter's cartoonish timing earned him a fresh new pair of handcuffs. But in this next case, the defendant would risk anything for freedom, even if that meant death. This is Aubrey Trail, who's charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains in Wilbur, Nebraska. Sydney Loft was a cashier at a local grocery store when she met Trejo. The two agreed to go on a date. But little did Loft know, Trejo already had a girlfriend, and the date was a trap. The day before the date, Trail and his girlfriend were seen buying hacksaws, food grinders, utility knives, and other cleaning supplies. The day of the date came, got into Trail's car, and was never seen again. Later, Trail posted a Facebook video protesting his innocence. Folks, Aubrey Trail. Here, a few little things I want to talk about. If I'm a thief, I'm a thief. But I've never killed anyone in my life. I've never hurt a female in my life. So take that for whatever the hell it's worth. And of course, say again, I'm just a criminal, so you're going to believe none of this. And I guess it's really irrelevant. Despite his confidence, police quickly arrested him and charged him with murder. You are charged, in this case, did kill Sidney Lou purposely and with deliberate and premeditated malice. Trejo still maintained his innocence, but things weren't looking good. The only thing they had not recovered was her other upper arm was missing. So, essentially, she was cut up into 14 pieces. Trejo knew he was losing this fight. So instead of letting himself die behind bars, he chose to die in the courtroom. Stop recording. Using a razor blade hidden in his sleeve, Trejo sliced his own throat in a suicide attempt in front of the jury. Paramedics rushed him to the emergency room. Despite the seriousness of his injuries, Trejo made a full recovery. Bikenkud Trejo couldn't hide his scars. You will be restrained for the balance of this trial. The judge restrained Trejo's hands. There was no escaping his sentence. Finally, it was time for Trejo to learn his sentence. Imposed by the panel on count 1, murder in the first degree, a class 1 felony. The defendant is sentenced to death. Trejo was willing to sacrifice his life to avoid jail time, but this next defendant's escape attempt was so lazy, it's laughable. That evaluation gives a "This is Seth, South, who's charged with 2 counts of murder in Poulsbo, Washington. In October of 2024, South was alone with his 2 younger brothers when he brutally attacked them with a kitchen knife. South was arrested on the highway hours later while trying to skip town. Driver, show me your hands. Hands out the window. I love you guys so much. Step out. Get on the ground. On the ground, on the ground. On the ground. Okay. Music, his one surviving sister, Cheyenne, said their parents never saw it coming. I think they're both equally as confused as everybody else is, and they're trying to figure out kind of what happened, where to go, what to do. Court, the judge asked him the same question. Why? I can give the answer. What I am going to do is I am going to have the next nobody would disagree with me. Like even the people I would suggest South's blatant disrespect escalated when he did this. Mission gets accomplished. I would certainly reserve my argument. South attempted to walk away. Thankfully, deputies grabbed him before he could take even 2 steps. South's trial has yet to begin, but thanks to his escape attempt, the judge denied bond. South will be stuck behind bars until his day in court. South's actions barely qualify as an escape attempt. But what happens when a criminal attempts to jump out of a skyscraper, like in the case of Travis Copeland, who's in court for a disorderly conduct charge while on bond? Copeland had just pleaded guilty to the charge. Scared of the consequences, he fled the courtroom onto a skyway, connecting the courthouse and the jail. However, his escape didn't go as smoothly as he'd hoped. Music officers were waiting for him on the other side of the bridge. Trapped, Copeland was left with no other options. The window, music, let's play that again. In a plan straight from an action movie, Copeland tried to bust through the window and fall to the busy street below, but the bulletproof glass stopped him in his tracks. Literally. Now Copeland was really out of options. His music escape attempt earned him a $50,000 to $1 million bond, and probably a sore shoulder.